Hey, this won't take 5 minutes, but really quickly, I'd like to tell you what the Bible's all about. Now, the Bible isn't just one book, it's actually 66 books written by 40 authors over 1,500 years. The books range from history, personal letters, recorded conversations, poetry that doesn't really rhyme in English, and prophecy. It covers history from 4004 BC all the way to 95 AD, and then it covers the future all the way to the end of the world as we know it and beyond. Now, the main goal of the Bible is to tell us where we came from, why the world around us is the way it is, and give us a roadmap to eternal life. The first book, Genesis. Genesis covers the creation of the world, the biography of the first man and woman, how they sinned against God, and how God paved a way for them to be forgiven, even though they didn't deserve forgiveness. Genesis records the first prophecy of Jesus, our coming Savior, and the first judgment on the world, Noah's flood, which explains where the Grand Canyon and fossils come from. And then it goes into the history of the nation of Israel. Genesis is most likely composed by various authors writing down events during their lifetimes. These writings were passed down and later compiled by Moses. The next four books, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, continue the historical narrative of the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. And then it goes into justice systems, tabernacle building, blessings of promises for those who do good things, and curses on people who do bad stuff. Now, normally I would tell you that these first five books that we just covered, Genesis through Deuteronomy, were called the Pentateuch and that the Jews call it the Talmud, but I don't have the time. But what I will tell you is that Moses wrote Exodus through Deuteronomy, and he would most likely was the compiler of Genesis. The 12 books after these, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, Ezra, Nehemiah, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and Esther, are pretty much history books. They record wars and kings, heroes turned villains and villains turned heroes, people who did good stuff, people who did bad stuff, and then people who just did stuff. Five more books, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon, they're all poetry, but not poetry in the sense of fables. These songs, sayings, and scriptures are written by people ranging from kings to a guy who lived during the Ice Age and another guy who played the cymbals. And finally, we had the last 17 books of the Old Testament: Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. These books cover history and prophecy, and you can usually tell who wrote them by the names on the covers. The contents range from the fall of Jerusalem to the rise and fall of the Babylonian Empire, all the way to prophecies of Jesus and the end of the age. These books help us to understand more deeply God's love, justice, and forgiveness. Now, that was the Old Testament, which, by the way, testament means covenant, and it doesn't allude to testimony, even though they sound similar.
But I'm digressing and I don't have time to do that.
The Old Testament is replete with promises of a coming Savior and the setting up of his future kingdom, but the Old Testament ends without that Savior on the scene. Sort of all the depression and no hero to save the day. But this is where the New Testament comes in. The hero is on the scene, and his name is Jesus. The first three books, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, are called the Synoptic Gospels. Now, they're called the Synoptic Gospels because they cover pretty much the same events, but told from three different points of view. The first book, Matthew, was mainly written to a Jewish audience, which is why he keeps bringing up Jewish prophecy that Jesus fulfilled. Mark seems to be targeting a more Gentile reader base, and Luke was most likely written to coincide with his other book, Acts. Now, the fourth Gospel, John, covers events that the Synoptic Gospels don't, such as the raising of Lazarus. John also goes into more theology. Now, the fifth book of the New Testament, called the Book of Acts, is a historical record of the early church. What happened after Jesus ascended from the earth, how persecution began, the conversion of Saul, also known as Paul, who is about to write the next 13 or 14 books of the Bible, and what happens when you set sail without listening to the prophet on board your ship. Now, the next 14 books, Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, and possibly Hebrews, were all written by the same guy, Paul. These are all personal letters sent by Paul to churches or individuals meant to correct or encourage people in their walk with God. The book of James was written by James, the brother of Jesus, and is partly about how faith and works go together. 1st and 2nd Peter were written by Peter to encourage his listeners, give advice to church leaders, and call them to holiness. Now we have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. 2nd and 3rd John, at only 13 and 14 verses, are the shortest books of the Bible, at only 245 and 219 words. Put together, there are fewer words than I've just spoken in this video. Now, John gives his listeners a call to stand without sin and to beware of deceivers and antichrists, and to love one another, which is where we get that catchy song, Beloved, let us love one another. Jude, the brother of James and Jesus, writes another short book on skeptics and judgment on the ungodly. And this brings us to Revelation, the last book of the Bible. Revelation was written by John, the author of the Gospel of John and the postcard trilogy 1, 2, and 3 Johns, the only book he ever wrote that we haven't titled after his own name. Revelation is a prophetic book that portrays the details of Jesus' second coming and how to recognize the false prophet and the Antichrist who will arise in the last days. Revelation ends beautifully with a portrayal of the wonders of heaven, the joys of salvation, and the call to come to Christ. Well, there you have it. Every book in the Bible in under 5 minutes. We'll see you later. Hey, for more information, be sure to check us out at oneangerpoint.com and don't forget to like and subscribe.